There's nothing like bones to remind you of your heritage.
The set of ideas that is being implemented and advanced in this capital at this time is terribly frightening to people who are students of history.
When you look at the Roman Empire, the parallels to what is going on in America are absolutely frightening.
And the question is, are we going to go the right path ourselves, or are we going to continue down the wrong path that so many nations have fallen into?
I can't save your soul. I can't promise forever.
Well, good day. Kirk Cameron, actor, author, and producer now of a new film called Monumental, is here with us. Hi, Kirk.
Hey, good morning, John. Good to talk with you.
Good to talk with you, too. I'm John Bona, and we're excited with our new film, Monumental, that was released last week, actually, on Tuesday, March 27th, for the one-night opening. And now it's showing at the AMC Theater in Vero Beach at the mall through Easter. So, Kirk, boy, you've worked on this really hard for almost 3 years. Tell us why you did Monumental the movie.
Well, as you know, John, my wife and I have 6 kids, and ultimately the reason I made this movie was really not as an actor or as a politician, but as a father. I'm concerned about the world that our kids are growing up in and the direction that it's heading, and I want to know what I can do to turn things around. And while most people are playing the blame game, with the right blaming the left and the left blaming the right, and government blaming big business and businesses blaming big government, I figured there's got to be something simpler. And maybe we've just forgotten what made our country such a great nation in the first place. So I wanted to go back and talk to the men and women who built this country, our forefathers, the Pilgrim mothers and fathers who laid down their lives for freedom and for their kids. And that's what sent me on this journey to England to retrace their escape route out of England to Holland and then across to America to learn who they were and why they did what they did. And what I found was just amazing. It was eye-opening, and it just thrilled my heart. But it also made me angry that no one had told me this before, about this rich Christian heritage that we have as Americans. Our history's been rewritten, but we are uncovering the truth and leading people back to America's real national treasure so that we can secure a future for our children.
The opening night, how did the opening night go? That was last Tuesday, right? Nationwide.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I was just blown away by what everybody did. I mean, tens of thousands of families, churches, political organizations, and devoted individuals just came out of the woodwork and showed up. We had over 100,000 people who came to this one-night showing of Monumental, and it was just a huge, huge success. It was unprecedented in several ways, and in fact, so many people have been demanding the movie come to their town that the movie has expanded now to more cities, and we're going to be through Easter, we're going to be there at the AMC, Indian River Theater, there in Vero Beach. So it's just been, the response has been tremendous.
You know, I've had the privilege, Kirk, of working you on this for the last couple of years, and for me, it's really been a personal journey of discovery too, and I think it is for everybody who still calls upon the name of the Lord. When you find out the message of this forefathers monument, this monument gives so clearly, boy, it really inspires you, doesn't it?
The monument I found to be just amazing. Can you imagine? I mean, John, if you and I decided that there was a message that we wanted to leave to our children and our grandchildren, and we ended up putting together enough money by gathering up funds from all around the community, and we built a 180-ton granite monument. It was the largest monument. I mean, it's bigger than the trees in my neighborhood that I'm looking at right now. I'm sitting here in my car on the side of the road, and that monument's bigger than these trees. It's the largest granite monument in America, and it lays out a strategy on how, if we ever forget how this country got built, that this would always remind us and bring us back home to the principles that made it work. I mean, you think how important that is. And most people in America have never heard of this monument. It is so amazing, and it's sitting on top of a hill hidden by a bunch of trees in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And we uncover this monument, and it will just, I think it's just incredible. It's amazing. You won't believe it when you see it.
It really is. My first time going up there a few years ago, and I know most people I talk to are not familiar with the Forefathers Monument, and especially that it actually began during the administration of our first president, George Washington, around 1794, and the fact that it took almost 100 years. I mean, you think about that. So the people that started it weren't alive when it was finished in 1889, and to think that they actually brought this to fruition after all that time and effort, and it's an incredible message that comes out of here. That I'd recommend it to any family.
Yeah, if you love your family, if you love your Christian faith, and you are willing to fight for the freedom that we enjoy in this country and pass it on to your children, you got to see Monumental. I mean, Monumental: In Search of America's National Treasure is a must-see for you and your family this weekend, because it really does uncover how they did it 400 years ago. There is no nation like America. It's unique in all of human history in terms of the freedoms that we have, the blessings we've experienced, and the strength and security that we enjoy. It is totally unique, and it's because of a unique set of principles. It's from a very special root that has produced this kind of fruit, and we need to protect it, because right now that root's being severed. And in an hour and a half, you'll have a clear understanding of what the root is, and you'll know what needs to be done to keep it healthy.
And Monumental is playing at the AMC in Indian River at the mall in Vero Beach the rest of the week up until Easter. And, boy, I'll tell you, it really, you ask yourself the question, really, what if a CODA map could be found and deciphered that would uncover our national treasure, the true treasure of our nation, that would feed the hungry, bring families back together, owning their own land and homes without usurious mortgages. I mean, where is such a CODA map? Is it buried beneath a cathedral in New York City or a lake in Oregon? I don't think so. But Kirk, you really, through this film, have rediscovered this coded map. It's a treasure sitting prominently on that forgotten hill, surrounded by old homes in America's hometown, Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Yeah, it's just amazing. You have to see it. If you're listening to this, we're not sensationalizing things here. The simple truth is that our forefathers and foremothers had enough foresight to know that we would be a forgetful people. We would be a selfish people, and that people by nature tend to get off track, get selfish, get absorbed in what's in it for me, get greedy, and you end up paying the price for that. And so they left us a map that would bring us back to the real treasure. And this treasure is not, it's not a pot of gold sitting at the end of the rainbow. It's not, some message on the back of the Declaration of Independence. You don't need to squeeze lemon juice on it to make it show up. It's giant. It's yelling at us from the top of a hill in Plymouth, and it's etched in granite, so it will never go away. but it can be forgotten, and that's what's happened. And so we're calling people back to it, to this powerful Christian heritage, to this faith that produced character that is necessary for our government system to work. Without character, the whole thing falls apart. And without faith, you're not going to have character. And that character will produce courage necessary to do the right thing over the long haul. And in the long run, God will bless it. That was the faith and the belief of our forefathers, and they left us a strategy, a blueprint on how to make it work.
You know, anybody that would consider the importance of major monuments throughout history, recorded history anyway, they were kind of the roadmaps and the treasure of a civilization. And, you know, take Egypt, for example. They devoted their full energy of that empire to build these pyramids. By the way, I want to go to Egypt someday. I've never been there. But in the case of Egypt, these pyramids still stand today, and it shows us what that culture, what the Egyptians were taught to treasure, which is what? A tomb for their pharaoh and his journey after death. And so you think about it, that hundreds of thousands of men, they gave their whole brief life to drag these 12-ton stones hundreds of miles and then piling them up in a desert for the life of one man after he was dead. But there is another kind of monument that is a keeper of the past, Kirk, that you're explaining, that can really unlock the hopes of future generations. And I love that story Marshall tells about when the Hebrews built their monument at Mount Gilgal. I think that's apropos, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They built that monument there, and they piled up those stones so that in future generations, if people lost their way in Israel and they found themselves out in the wilderness again, so to speak, with their beliefs and their convictions, their children would see these stones and they'd say, "Grandpa, or Grandma, what do these stones mean? Why are these stones here?" And that would remind you of what God did at that place. And in essence, that's what our forefathers have done for us. They've piled up these granite stones in the form of the national monument to the forefathers, and it lays out the strategy. And it reminds us of what God did 400 years ago, where tyranny was defeated and peace ruled and reigned in this nation because of a certain faith, a faith that was a blessing to all people, a faith that gave a basis for character and virtue and morality and just and merciful laws, and provided civility to where you could educate your kids in the right worldview, and you could teach them business and science and poetry and arts and philosophy and theology and history, and you could teach your children what was worth fighting for. And it wasn't, money, so to speak, for the sake of money. It was the faith and the virtue and the character and honor that the kids would fight for, and so that when you grew up, you were a force to be reckoned with. Not just some macho man, but a man who loved his God and was willing to protect his faith and his family and his country because it's the right thing to do.
And you could see this film right now running through Easter at the AMC at the mall in Vero Beach. It's actually the only city in the area that is running the film. So get out there and see it. Monumental. And, Kirk, the way you explained that, I mean, honestly, just speaking frankly, America in general, like the ancient Hebrews, we've lost our way. And I know that's what's inspired you to do this film. And we need landmarks of our forefathers to point the way back to God. And boy, that story of the forefathers' monument, starting with, with families, when you think about it, a small shipload of families known as the Pilgrims, the Separatists. They set foot in New England on a rock, and this small group of families, they knew in their hearts the unchanging, proven strategy for building a free and prosperous nation. And they put it in the strategy right in this monument. And it's exciting that they really had this in their hearts and souls, didn't they, when they came over?
Yeah, they did. As Marshall likes to say, that the treasure that the Pilgrims brought were not in chests made of wood. It wasn't a bunch of gold and jewels in a chest of wood. It was in the chests of men.
Mm.
It was the ideas, it was the principles, it was the truths that had been planted in their hearts by their pastor and by the Word of God and by the heroes of faith that had gone before them. And these were the seeds that were carried in the belly of the boat coming across the Mayflower that they planted in this virgin soil. And that gave birth to the greatest nation in human history. And we've been enjoying the blessing of that.
You know, Kirk, I'll never forget the one day we were filming up there. It was last summer, and a pastor from upstate New York drove over with his whole family and part of his congregation. And he had a spiritual experience there where he really believed that he heard from God. And it was one word he heard, remember. And, you know, it's interesting that on the same year that our Constitution was ratified, I think it was 1787, a powerful rainstorm poured into that forgotten little village of Plymouth on Cobb's Hill, that area just above Plymouth Rock, and exploded the ancient remains, the bones of the first settlers who had died and were buried in a common grave in that first winter. And I know that story is told in the film, but it's interesting in this word remember, because when the people in the village saw the bones of the Pilgrims, they remembered and they repented. They actually had forgotten this whole story. And that's really what caused the building of the monument, right?
Yeah, you know, that's a great story. I mean, to think of people who had lost their way, they had really drifted from the principles of their forefathers, and then, you know, we say the phrase, you know, boy, you know, if our ancestors could see this now, you know, they'd be rolling over in their graves. Well, that literally happened. They rolled over and right out of their graves when the ground got so saturated with the flooding waters that it burst open the side of that hill where they were buried. Literally, their forefathers were coming out of their graves, and it was those bones that reminded them that, you know, they have fallen so far from their original ideals, and that they needed to remember who they were and where they came from, and they needed to go back to those first principles. And those are the beginnings of the awakenings that took place in America spiritually, and that's the kind of thing that we need to have again now. And we're trying to do that by showing people this movie and telling them these stories so that we can remember and move forward by going back to the American first principles.
And folks, you could see this film, Monumental, at the AMC Theater in Vero Beach. It's running right now up through Easter. And boy, that monument is so blatantly Christian. It seems like it should be illegal, Kirk. You know.
Well, you know, if we don't turn things around, it will be one day. You know, if they're taking the Ten Commandments out of a courtroom, just imagine how those folks would feel about 180 tons of granite sitting on top of a hill overlooking America's hometown. So this is something that we need to get involved with. It's something we need to support. We need to not only go see this movie, but live out the principles that our forefathers left us. And we're going to do our best to help make that easy. And well, it's not going to be easy. We'll make it simple, but it requires character and courage and persistence and perseverance. So the first step is go check out this movie. I bet you're going to love it, and I bet it's going to light a fire inside you. And that's what we need in this country, is a personal revival in the hearts of moms and dads.
Exactly. And I appreciate that that the film Monumental does show that these people believe that they were created for a specific purpose, you know, to accomplish something in their life. They knew they were a new link, you know, being forged in the chain of liberty, and on that tiny Mayflower ship as they were, you know, tossed by the storms of the Atlantic Ocean. And it's interesting, Kirk, that monument, you know, this is Holy Week here. We're in Easter week. It all begins with faith in God. You know, faith being the central figure, and she's pointing to heaven and holding a Bible with the pages being blown open by the wind. And, you know, you think this providentially that this week the film is here, and It's Easter Sunday coming up, the Holy Week. And this whole message of faith in God and His Word, it's really where it all begins. And, of course, the Pilgrims had the Bible with them on the Mayflower and brought that with them. They had faith in God. It was the core of their liberty and of their lives. Well, Kirk, thank you so much for your time today. And you got a minute here. Would you like to wind it up?
Well, I'm already wound up, John. I can't wait for people to see Monumental this weekend. If you haven't seen it at the one-night live event, you've still got an opportunity to see it in the big theater before it comes out on DVD. That'll be a little while from now, probably around the 4th of July, but it's in the big theater, and this is definitely the time to see it. Go out this weekend, grab your friends, grab your family, get a history lesson that is not a dry broccoli and Brussels sprouts documentary, but an exciting story where you follow the escape route of the Pilgrims, learn about our forefathers and the principles that made America the richest, freest, most strong and secure nation in the world, so that you can be part of securing a future for our children.
Thank you, Kirk Cameron. Monumental at the AMC Theater, running now through Easter Sunday. Get out there and see it. Take your family. God bless.
There are those who would have us believe that the United States has reached the zenith of its power, that we're weak and fearful, reduced to bickering with each other. I don't agree that our nation must resign itself to inevitable decline.
America is the richest, freest nation the world has ever seen. But as a father of 6, I look around and all signs tell me something is sick in the soul of our country. And history tells me that we're headed for disaster if we don't change our course now.
The set of ideas that is being implemented and advanced in this capital at this time is terribly frightening to people who are students of history.
If you look at the 70 superpowers in history, every single one of them has called themselves exceptional.
When you look at the Roman Empire, the parallels to what is going on in America are absolutely frightening.
And the question is, are we going to go the right path ourselves, or are we going to continue down the wrong path that so many nations have fallen into?
I went on a journey to retrace the footsteps of our forefathers to see if they left us some kind of a map that would guide us back to the foundation of America's success.
When I think of Pilgrims, I think of what I was taught in history class. I think of Pilgrims coming over in these funny black and white suits with big hats and belt buckles on their shoes.
These are the people out of the box. These are the radicals of the day.
Can you imagine? Chained here, and you're open to the elements.
You can read about places like this. You can smell the history.
You can't fake this.
Welcome to Mayflower 2.
So we have 102 people in this area.
Look at that. I mean, can you imagine you're going to be sharing that?
It's actually quite comfortable.
What I discovered is that our history has not just been forgotten, it's been rewritten.
I'm stunned. Just what's on this table. I mean, this alone would change everyone's perspective about what made America such a great nation.
Time is flying by too quickly, and our children's futures won't wait. We've got to do something now.
Why is this monument not being showcased more? It is illustrating the principles of what this country is all about, and it's falling apart.
There is nothing in today's America that cannot be solved by a genuine going back to the American first principles.
That's good news. Very good news. I'm looking for good news.
This is the most important journey of my life. My family is worth fighting for, and so is yours.